Hi guys, welcome back to another video. My name is Nozer Razvan and in this video I'm gonna talk about and show you the basics of API testing via Postman. First, let's talk about what an API is. You probably googled it and you saw that it's an acronym for Application Programming Interface. But to avoid any complicated technical explanation, let's take a real life scenario. Let's say you are at a restaurant wanting to order some food. The food is prepared in the kitchen. But how does the communication go through between you and the kitchen? This is done by the waiter. The waiter comes to you, takes your order, goes back to the kitchen, tells the chef how to prepare, and so on and so forth. Basically, the waiter is our API here. API connects information together. For example, let's say you are on a website and you see some images there. Those images are stored on a server, and to be displayed on your screen, they come through an API. Now, let's talk about Postman. Postman is a tool which helps you test your APIs. They call the API for you. So now let's start practicing with some APIs. There are a bunch of free websites there available for you to practice, and for this session I'm gonna use RESTful Booker, which is also a free website to use. For now, I'm not gonna create all of those APIs in Postman, but I'm gonna create just like one or two. This is how an API documentation looks like. You have the title, some descriptions there, you have the type of the API, the link, some examples, and so on and so forth. And now let's create this API here, which is called create token. And to do that, let's go back to our Postman, and first we need to create a collection, which is basically a folder where we can store our API requests. Let's call it practice test for our session. Now we can add our first request here, and we can name it create token, as we saw in the documentation. And now let's take a look here. We see that it's a post type request, and let's copy also the link. So we go back, we change it to a post type, and we paste the URL here. Now let's go back to the documentation and scroll down a little bit, and we can see that we need a field in the header section and some fields in the request body. But since we have an example here, let's copy this part over here and paste it in our body of the request. Here we need to select raw and JSON since it's a JSON file, and paste it here. And now for the header part, we can see that we have 8 hidden headers here, and if we unhide them, we can see that we already have the content type here. It was auto-generated. And for now, let's save it. Also, don't forget to always save your requests. And now press send to call our API. As you can see here in our requests, the status is 200, which means it's okay, and we have the token as a response. And if we go back here, as we can see in the example response here, the response should be 200 okay and a token. Now that we have created our first API, let's remember that in order to create an API in Postman, we have everything we need in the API documentation. Every field that we need, we have also examples and so on and so forth. Now let's create our second API. Let's take the first one here, get booking IDs, which returns the IDs of all the bookings that exist within the API. Okay, so now let's copy the link as usual, the URL of the API, and let's create another request. Add request, and let's call it get booking IDs. And we paste the URL here, let's take another look. It's a get request. We have some optional parameters here, which we are not going to use now. Since they are not required, they are only optional, you don't have to put them there. And let's call the API. And we can see in the response body that we have a bunch of booking IDs. And don't forget to save your API. Now let's create another one, which is gonna be a little bit more complicated. Let's take the update booking one. So as usual, we copy our URL, we go here, we create a new request, we call it update booking. We saw that it's a put request, and we paste the URL here. Now let's press on send. Let's see what happens. It says forbidden. We go back to the documentation and we see that we need a lot more parameters here. First, let's take a look on the URL parameter, which is the ID. And as we saw before in the get booking IDs, let's take an ID from here. Let's say this 9 here. We go back and the URL, we modify this ID with a 9. So now we are gonna update the booking number 9 with the ID 9. Now let's go back and let's see that in the body we need a bunch of parameters here, a bunch of fields, and for us to be easier to do that, let's copy from the example the fields. We go to the body, we select raw, JSON, and we paste the example here. Now let's call it again, forbidden again. Let's go back. Here in the header we see that we need some fields as well. We need a content type, we need the accept field, cookie, and authorization, which are optional. The cookie header also is an alternative to the authorization one, so we're gonna just use the cookie one. And if we go back in the headers, we can see that the content type is already generated and also the accept one is already generated. So we just need the cookie one. So for the cookie one, we just create here a new one. In the key, we write cookie. And in the value, we can see here that we need a token. So we write token equals, and for it to work, we need to use the token that we already created here. So we copy this, we go back to the request, and we paste it here. Now we save the request, and we send it again. Forbidden, which means that our token has expired. We create a new one, we copy this, we go back, we change it, and now we send it, and you can see that it works. So basically, as we can see here, the success response should look like this. All the fields here which have been changed, and the status 200 OK. In our case, we have the 200 OK status and also the response fields. So let's say we want to change the name and the first name and the last name. From Brown, let's say Green, and James, let's say John, for example. We send it again, and we can see here that it was changed to John Green. So this is it for this video. I just showed you some basics and how to create some APIs using the API documentation, and in the next video I'm gonna show you some tips and tricks. That's it. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.